Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Behind the Scenes of Jrock's Pop Culture Revolution. This is episode number 15, if you guys can believe it or not, of our spinoff show. And as we do every Wednesday night, we do one of these episodes just to kind of give you a sneak preview of what's coming up on our brand spanking new episode of our big show, Jrock's Pop Culture Revolution, which we roll out every Thursday morning at 8 a.m. So let's let you know what's coming up now. If you remember last week, our episode we rolled out was episode number 34, and it ended up having to be a two-part episode. So last week we rolled out part one, and our episode, of course, was talking about celebrating 86 years of a Walt Disney movie, Pinocchio. Right here, you see it. Now, what's interesting is as we did the research on the episode, came to find out for many reasons that having to do with World War II and the fact that Pinocchio came out in 1940 during the time of the World War II era. Many of the foreign markets throughout Europe, specifically the European war-torn countries that were, taking part of World War II, did not get to see the movie when it originally came out. And of course, as you can imagine, many of these countries did not get to see movies like Pinocchio or Bambi or even Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs years later, until after the films had already been out, a few years. But they did not get a chance to see those films like during the original release. So many of those European countries didn't get to see these American movies, not just Disney movies, but really American movies of any kind until after World War II. And now apparently, even in the United States, during World War II, we found out that people were struggling financially and had a lot. People's lives were, of course, really affected by the war for various reasons. And we discussed all that in part two of our episode. In fact, what was interesting is if you watched part one of our episode, a good chunk of the episode was spent talking about the fact that Pinocchio and its success at the box office, or I should say, it wasn't really a success at the box office when the film originally came out in 1940, in large part because of World War II. And we discussed that during the episode. In fact, just as we were ending, part one of our episode, we started talking about just a little bit about kind of the fact that Walt Disney originally halted production on Pinocchio for the simple fact that he felt that the character of Pinocchio, it stayed too true to the original version of Pinocchio, which was very dark and rude and crude. And Walt was afraid that a Pinocchio like that, people were going to get up before the film was even over. Nobody was going to fall in love with Pinocchio. He said, you know what? We got to Disney up Pinocchio. We got to create a more lovable character. So initially, Walt Disney scrapped the original production and they started over from scratch. And this is what we ended up with, this version of Pinocchio. And this is a version of Pinocchio that people saw 80 years ago, when the movie originally came out. And of course, ever since Pinocchio came out in 1940, we really didn't get into this in part one or part two of the episode. But, of course, Disneyland and all the Disney characters, when you go to visit Disneyland, Pinocchio is one of the Disney characters you may see walking around the park. And even though Pinocchio is 86 years old, if you will, it still remains one of the most popular Disney characters ever. But in fact, his popularity is he's not as popular as he was back in 1940 when the movie was first released. But what we come to find out is being 86 years old, Pinocchio's kind of moved into iconic status, if you will. He's become a legendary kind of iconic figure in the history of the Disney characters. Not as popular as he once was, but he still remains one of the most popular characters. Like I said, um, he's not, Mickey Mouse is still like the top Disney character, but now you've got Star Wars, the Muppets, and all these other characters that are part of a Disney organization. So Pinocchio is not the top dog like he once was, but he's still very much an iconic character now. Now, as far as so just as we were ending episode 34, part one last week, we spent a huge chunk of the episode talking about the effects World War II had on the success or the lack of Pinocchio's success at the box office, and why it affected it the way it did, and how people reacted to the movie once they've seen it. Now, as we're ending part one of our episode last week, we just got into talking about the fact that originally Pinocchio was a much darker character, and that Walt Disney, I think, made the right decision. That I think he was very smart to say, hey, we want to make Pinocchio much more of a lovable character. We want to Disney it up, and thank God they did, because I think that in a large part is why um, it remains one of Disney's classic films. I mean, we got to remember that Pinocchio was the second animated Disney full length movie following the success of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Now, what's interesting to find out that we found out in our research was that Bambi was originally supposed to be the follow up to Snow White. However, Bambi fell into some problems, and the schedule was pushed back. So when that happened, they pushed Pinocchio up, and that actually became the second animated full length Disney movie. And also, as you'll see in part two of our episode that we're going to roll out tomorrow, where we talk specifically in great detail about the movie. So if you want to know all these facts about Pinocchio and what made it such a great film, tomorrow's episode, what you really want to tune into, because what you're going to get to is we break down all the, besides Pinocchio, which we talk about, you'll get a breakdown of the different characters that are featured throughout the movie, and their role, and the importance they played in Pinocchio. The story of Pinocchio. We break down some of the villains, the fact that a good chunk of the Pinocchio movie is about dreams coming true, taking yourself into that fantasy world where you allow yourself to believe that, you can wish upon a star and your dream will come true. Again, it's pretty much fantasy land. It's going to that place, Never Land, a place that you don't visit too often. But you know what? If Never Land doesn't really exist, boy, I wish it did. And just the thought that you could wish upon a star and make your dream come true. What a beautiful sentiment. What a beautiful thing to kind of allow yourself to. I mean, even you watch Pinocchio and you see, Pinocchio and Geppetto and the whole gang get swallowed by a monster of the whale. Okay, I mean, what are the chances of that really happening? First of all, what are the chances of the whole family being swallowed up by a whale, but then they escape from the whale's tummy and they get out alive? Not very likely. Again, it's a fairy tale, but we allow ourselves to go there because everybody loves happy endings. So when Pinocchio ends the end of the movie and Geppetto's wish of Pinocchio becoming a real little boy, he didn't just become a real little boy. He earned it. He proved he could be a good boy. He quit telling lies. And so that's a really fun aspect of a movie. It's about temptation. It's about dreams can come true. Dreams do come true. Having the belief they can. And then also learn about the fact that the signature song, When You Wish Upon a Star, actually won an Academy Award for that song. And that song helped put Disney on the map. And it became one of Disney's signature songs. And it showed people just the importance that a song could have in a movie like that. We come to find out that Jiminy Cricket um, was a character that Walt Disney really had a lot to do with. I mean, Jiminy Cricket was not a major character in the original Pinocchio from the 1800s, but Walt Disney chose to turn Jiminy Cricket into Pinocchio's conscience, the one that steered him to do the right, uh, in the right direction. His conscience, one that knew the difference between right and wrong. I mean, Jiminy Cricket is just a little cricket, but he's a narrator. He's a voice throughout the movie we hear. He's guiding Pinocchio all along the way. And what I love about Jiminy Cricket is he's not a huge, enormous character, but man, he fills up the room. He fills up the screen, if you know what I mean. I mean, he's got such a huge presence throughout the entire movie. And to think that he wasn't a big character in the original story that dates back to the late 1800s. Again, Walt Disney's version of Pinocchio doesn't come out till 1940, but the original story was printed in the late 1800s. Pretty pretty cool to think that it's a story that goes back that far. And of course, once Walt Disney and the Disney company get their hands on story, they Disney it up. But again, I think Walt Disney was so right. We would not want to see a dark Pinocchio. We would not want to see a mean and rude. We want to see a cute little boy, and it's just such a lovely, lovely story. I mean, how many of you guys like me remember as a kid your mom and dad telling you, hey, don't tell any lies. If you lie, your nose is going to grow like Pinocchio. Well, I tell you as a kid, again, I allowed myself to go there and believe that if you told a lie, that your nose is going to grow. Kids will believe anything, but you know what? It worked. I mean, okay, sure, we all tell little white lies every now and then, but you know what? I got a real thing about telling the truth. So um, I don't really lie about things that really matter, if you know what I mean, because my word means something. Um, I I don't like to lie. Again, we all tell little white lies, so I'm not going to sit here and say I never told a lie in my life. Sure I have, but I don't make a habit of it. I pride myself in being an honest person, being a straight shooter, tell people the truth. And so, but again, as a child, and you hear your mom and dad telling you, "Hey, don't be a liar. Nobody likes liars. If you tell lies, your nose is going to grow like Pinocchio. Oh, I don't want my nose to grow like Pinocchio, so I better listen to my mom and dad." Okay, as a child, it worked for a while, but then when you get around being a teenager, maybe you don't believe it. My nose isn't going to grow. I mean, are you kidding? Um, so it's a great classic movie. And again, once Walt Disney gets his hands on it, it becomes a very different story than what it originally was. And I'm kind of curious because the guy that created the story, or he that wrote the original Pinocchio story in the 1800s, he did not live to see the movie be made. And again, I'm kind of curious what he would have thought of the Walt Disney version of Pinocchio. Would he have liked it? I mean, would he have liked the changes they made? Who knows? Maybe he would have said, "Hey, you guys, you totally made it your own and you strayed away from the original story." But Walt Disney got a hold of it and they really made it, I think, something special. And this is when they were just learning to make movies in the night. If you go back to the 1930s, most of the movies were in black and white. A lot of the movies in the 1930s didn't have a lot of dialogue. Like you go back to the original Dracula, it's pretty much just Dracula in most of the movie. He's just talking to himself in a room, talking out loud, thinking out loud. But by the time you get to a movie like Pinocchio, it comes out in 1940. Um, Even for an animated movie, it's got a storyline. It's got characters that are developed, characters throughout the movie interacting with each other. And Pinocchio is very much colorized, so now we're not just having full length animated movies like Pinocchio, but they're in beautiful living color. That's something I used to even remember seeing, when you watch TV shows that were originally on back in the 1960s and 70s, it would say in living color. We forget that like Bewitched was originally um, recorded on black and white film. And then eventually they colored Bewitched episodes, and and it's kind of interesting because something like again like I'm so used to seeing the original Frankenstein movie in black and white. I don't know that I'd want to see it in color. I love watching things in color. Don't get me wrong, but watching an old horror movie like that, I don't know that it would work if they were to colorize it. It'd look kind of strange almost because we're so used to seeing it a certain way. Black and white is was early movies from the 19th gives it a real nostalgia look. Now, as you guys know from watching our show every week, I love talking about pop culture. It's one of my favorite things to do because when we do our episodes, we can talk about anything from movies, TV shows, music. Pop culture could be almost anything. And you could have a conversation about it, which I think is really, really cool. And the other thing that I love about doing the show is, the stuff you learn along the way. Like I thought I knew a lot about the movie Pinocchio and the history of it. I learned a lot that I didn't know, in doing this episode, and then come to find out, you know what? We want to tell. It's important to tell the whole complete story. I realized it was going to take 2 episodes to really tell the complete story of Pinocchio. One episode to really kind of talk about the background of what was going on during World War II. And again, we're talking about a Walt Disney animated movie, and you're like, what the hell does World War II have to do with Pinocchio? Well, watch our episode, part one from last week, and you will find out. Now, if you want to know about all the fun facts about the making of Pinocchio and the behind the scenes stuff and all the secrets, part two, which rolls out tomorrow at 8 a.m., is what you're going to want to tune in to, folks. Another fun thing is, you remember a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was episode number 32, if I'm not mistaken, we did an episode on celebrating 60 years of Star Trek. Now, that was a real fun one to do for so many reasons, but I wanted to share with you guys another fun fact was that apparently the folks from the official Star Trek Facebook page seen our little episode. I don't really know what else to think. I mean, I can't tell you that I got a letter or even an email where they said how much they loved it, but I got notified by Facebook. Hey, you have received an ultimate fan badge or something for the show you put together on Star Trek. Wow. Okay. So that tells me somebody from Star Trek, affiliated with Star Trek, as far as whoever runs a Facebook page, saw our little episode, and that's kind of exciting to think. Not only that they saw the show, but they kind of given us a nod, a wink, say, "Hey, good job. We checked it out, and thanks for doing a show on a 60th anniversary of Star Trek." So people are starting to watch our show. So thank you for all your support and that. Now, one more thing, every week we roll out one of these behind the scenes episode to give you a sneak peek of what's coming tomorrow at 8 a.m. And I always like to also give you a preview of the next episode, which is still a week away. But I can tell you, I've gone ahead and done the research, and this is going to be another fun episode. Not your typical episode, okay? We're going to do episode number 35 on the Fonzie craze of the 1970s. Now, we're going to do a lot more than just talk about our, my favorite Fonzie themed, episodes of Happy Days. No. There will be some of that going on, but we're really going to focus on the character of Arthur Fonzarelli, the Fonz, and why in the 1970s, when Henry Winkler started appearing on Happy Days, the characters just broke out in such a huge way. And again, it's more than just the popularity of a character. It's eventually, as great as the popularity was, it also caused Henry Winkler to get to be typecast, and we're going to talk about that. But along the way, there was so much great stuff. I mean, we're going to also get into all the merchandising that came along with the popularity of the Fonz being just such a cool guy. The Fonz, I remember being such a rock star. Well, you know what? Even to this day, 54 years old here, about ready to turn 55, July 4th, 1 month away, folks. It's going to be my 55th birthday. And I share that because as I sit here talking about the fact we're going to do an episode on the Fonz, I'm just so excited about that. And again, I've already done the research, and there's so much to talk about. You're not gonna believe it. I mean, all the merchandise there was. The Fonz was just the coolest thing. Still is to me. 55 years old, Fonz is one of I think my top number one favorite TV character of all time, and we're going to get into it. So, thanks you guys for watching. I am Jason Jrock Houston, and you've been watching episode number 15 of Behind the Scenes of Jrock's Pop Culture Revolution. And I want you guys tomorrow, when you're watching the latest episode number 34 of Jrock's Pop Culture Revolution, rolls out at 8 a.m. That you remember that we are the loudest voice in pop culture. So this is the show to tune in if you're into pop culture. Hey, like the Fonz would say, hey, see you next time.